Welcome to my podcast. This is the Health Talk with Dr. Obinna. We'll be explaining everything that has to do with the fundamental factors that create healthy living and delve into the cellular biology in a way that is easy to understand for anyone, whether at least from age 12, you should be able to watch this and understand the fundamentals that drive our health. It is under the mantra, knowledge is the beginning of healing. We will explain these factors and create an enabling environment to apply them to your health. I am also hoping we'll apply another mantra of mine, which I find that you can design your own health. Once you understand these fundamentals, it is very easy for you to create a mindset to apply them strategically using SMART principles. Anybody who know about SMART is that they are very specific, measurable, attainable, and reproducible time-based principles, which are going to help explore the processes that you are in your home, at your own place, can create a healthy environment where you can thrive. The fundamental concepts that I have personally capsulated into 3 pillars of the mouth, the muscle, and mind, actually derived from the pillars of lifestyle medicine, and they form the foundations of lifestyle medicine. And so I am so excited about the mind because it is the most crucial element. While everybody talks about things that you can get from every diet and exercise on the internet, the diet and exercise represent the mouth and the muscle. But exploring the more delicate issues that arise from our mind, our mindset, and our mental state is essential. This mental environment significantly affects our overall health and well-being. So please, I want you to consider this perspective because I'll be dwelling on it in most of my podcasts. Not that I won't be talking about mouth and muscle or diet and exercise. I want you to take your pen and paper because we will be going directly to start dissecting these fundamentals. In my introduction, I mentioned that I'll be doing this. It does not matter where you are now in your health journey. We are going to walk with you. We are going to talk with you. I am going to strategically hold your hands to a point where we should be able to make an impact. I want to make an impact on your health. As a promise and a strategic objective, I want to make sure that no one who watch my podcast, whether you're dealing with a health condition or looking to sustain or improve your health, I'm going to support you and I'll be giving you all blocks and fundamentals that you need. The discussion will, of course, be interactive. And so from time to time, I'm going to invite experts in various fields that will help make inputs that will guide us through these fundamental concepts. They can share their insights and help us know a little bit more. These expert opinions and advice I've always known because most of the time, this knowledge that we seek, you can always learn every day, including myself. I try to learn every day. So whatever it is that we are going to discuss, one of the things I promise is that it's going to be from the perspective of the specific, the attainable, and the reproducible parts of it, so that you can, at your own time, in your own social and cultural plus economic environment, you can make it a lifestyle. And that's what we are intending to do in this podcast. So if you want to take notes, get your papers because I am going to be delving a lot into simplistic ways of understanding the fundamentals that drive our health. And that's where I want to begin to lay the foundation. I encourage you to deeply think about some of this because today I'm going to start by discussing the most important fundamentals, the process that helps our body sets the stage for most of the age-related conditions, and that is the process of aging itself. The process of aging, which we now know is at the background of something that change to create the environment for these diseases. These diseases that's called non-communicable diseases of lifestyle are responsible for about 80% of all-cause mortality in our generation. In the earlier days, It used to be infections and infestations. So we're going to cover the whole fundamentals that drive the aging process. It is something that I find there because I did a course way back when I was starting to study lifestyle medicine called the Cellular Foundations of Aging. And that taught me about these fundamental changes called the hallmarks of aging. And we believe that they occur from that very moment, they sperm from the father fertilize the egg in the mother, leading to the formation of a small embryo that eventually the process of the cell division that starts with a highly accurate replication mechanism, allowing the cells to divide and contribute to the development of the new human being. So from day one, this process has intrigued me. Anybody who have read my 2 books will see that I always bring it in my book, Darwinism and Creation, The Reality of God. My first book, you will not miss looking at when I first realized how intricate the process of fertilization and the process of forming the first human being occurred. That has been the foundation of my own philosophical understanding of health. So aging is an inevitable biological process that we cannot stop. It is characterized, of course, by the progressive changes from that point of that fertilization over time. So as we age, there are so many factors coming from everywhere, from among the muscle and the mind. That's called our environmental factors that affect the body's ability to continue this process that would have been so pristine. And then that is what makes it vulnerable, not just to the aging process for today. That brings me one of the things I always want to talk about. There is now a theory called the disposable soma theory. This is now widely discussed because it's a theory that suggests, and if you look at it very closely, the purpose of our stay on earth, if you don't know one, is the fact that we want to continue the life on earth by replenishing the earth by reproduction. It emphasizes the importance of maintaining a balance between humans and the plants in our health earth, which is the ecosystem of the earth. Every ancient religion had specifically talked about this. So specifically, there is this need for the earth to be maintained, and so continuously we provide carbon dioxide for plants, and they in turn give us oxygen, and that is the cycle that is essential for keeping the earth. If you want to put this together, I want you to put it down, because it is important that every drive, every resource that was given to us as human was based of the entirety of this process. The entire part of our biology is therefore designed with a vibrancy of physiological balance to support the vigorous processes and the cellular processes that keep us alive and healthy, so that we can replenish the earth. And plants, by imperative, we are going to find out why we want to eat plant-based diet, also need us to be alive because they want to maintain them. So from the age of about 10 to 11 to the age of 45 to 50, it is those biological mechanisms that begin the process at birth that keeps us alive vigorously to maintain this span, to make sure that our earth is maintained. If you want to get that clear, it is important for you to know that the universe wants you to be alive. So our health span may begin to decline after that 50 years, but this decline is not due to disability or lack of genetic material needed to sustain it. It is because the natural inbuilt mechanisms that the universe and nature and God, for those who believe in God, has already given to us as a foundational part of our existence. So it is ourselves that through the process of what we put in our mouth, how we use the energy in the muscles, and the environment that we put ourselves, that creates that dent in our ability to maintain our health. And so you need to know that this is very crucial. It therefore means that majority of the factors that you need to sustain yourself has already been given to you. It is now left for you as a human being to keep it and design your own health. So in this podcast and in this live stream, I will serve to be your health guide to help you understand what really occurs during these processes and explore the practical steps that you need to take based on these same principles I've mentioned, the mouth, the muscle, and the mind, to then tell you what you can do, how you can maintain your health within the confines of your unique environment and your own social-cultural environment. In 2012, the Nobel Prize of Medicine and Physiology was won by a science called epigenetics. Epigenetics have helped us understand that our genetic blueprint, the fundamental part of our health, is not the sole determinant of our health. Epigenetics means above the genes. So our environment plays a huge role that influences the expression of this genetic blueprint. And I want you to get it very clear that everything from the scientific Nobel-winning science to our own precept of understanding of creation says that we are the ones in charge of our health. So that's going to base the foundation of our discussion today. I want to establish that important principle that we need to explore what happens between that moment that we are formed, between the sperm and the egg, and then which is the process of fertilization, and what happens over time. It begins to form cells, continuously multiply highly faithfully. Every cell will divide exactly as the other copy continuously to eventually form who we are today over time. We are supposed to be, if that is the process, we are supposed to therefore live forever. This process is common among not only in human beings, but is so across every genetic millennia of evolution. It is in us, though. It is uniquely complex. And it is this complexity that we are going to talk about, that it leads to deterioration that happens over time that make us to age. And it is that process of degeneration and deterioration we now know that gives the impetus for diseases to occur. So from the above, you can see that phenotypically, which is by the physical expression, the aging process will continue. Things like graying of our hair, my hair, the wrinkling on my face. Actually, my hair is suddenly started turning gray. So it is different for different individuals because of the environment as well. My skin is no longer supple as it used to be. However, these changes occur over time because of the same fundamental biological effects that I am going to try to bring today. This is going to be the part one of it because we can't cover it during the day. So I will term it the hallmarks of aging. In fact, there's a young man called Cortez with his friends who brought them up in the early 80s. I can't remember the year again, but who brought them up to say that there were originally about 6 hallmarks of aging, and they were eventually brought, 3 more were added to it. It is this understanding we have about these factors and these hallmarks that make us know the driving changes that occur and the factors that drive them. And so it becomes very easy for us to understand that certain actions that we take can influence them. In fact, we now know that by adjusting our habits based on this understanding, we can strategically create an environment that counter these factors and so delay your own aging. So that's what I mean by you having your own future in your hands. You can delay your aging as well as alter those factors that go wrong to create the environment for diabetes, hypertension, heart diseases, cancer, and neurodegenerative disorders. I often tell my patients and people that I know that if you understand this, if you can see through this, not through any special power, but by you understanding yourself and changing your own habits and addressing other environmental factors related to what goes into your mouth or does not go into your mouth, to how you use the energy, that the fuel that you get, the muscles that you use, and of course the generation of the processor power from your mind. This is what the aging process is, why we now know you can now have potential targets to intervene to reduce the process of aging. And this can be either therapeutic sometimes or by using your own lifestyle, that you can slow down the aging process. We now know you can actually reverse them, and as well as influence, affect, and disrupt those things that we now know come from them. So in this podcast, my friends, I am hoping to explore them with you. Each of these hallmarks we are going to discuss, like I said, this is part one. We are going to discuss the nitty-gritty implications of it. And then we are going to therefore develop together, by understanding, develop some of the strategies we now believe you can use to mitigate their effect and reduce the acceleration of aging. And we believe that if you do that, you can also affect the causes of most of these chronic diseases if you don't have them, or at least reverse some of them, or treat them or manage them. Diabetes, hypertension, heart diseases, cancers, neurodegenerative disorders like Alzheimer's, Parkinsonism, chorea. So what Cortez and his group had done, and some other changes that have happened over the years, I thank God for the information superhighway, because we are now understanding that a lot of research, a lot of people are spending years in little research groups trying to find and see how they can expose some of these factors. They call some of them primary. These primary factors are the ones that change due to damage from the ab initio, from the time the sperm was. So if you start causing damage over time, and then the second group, they say we are the ones that antagonize the cells, because the cells now trying to cope with that damage will make changes that will eventually cause problems with the aging process. And then the third part, when you put them together, called integrated response, which encompass all the outcome of these processes, how they naturally influence the cells and then therefore cause us to age a little more. That's how we are going to divide them. I think today we're going to talk a little bit about the primary mostly. Each of these groups of these processes I'm talking about, they have huge impacts on two different mechanisms. The first one, like I said, is the original damage to the genetic blueprint that we now know is called the DNA. Because all the blueprint that Watson and Crick discovered DNA as this little curly thing that is in our genes, what is now called genes in the chromosomes, that we now learn that during the time of fertilization, from both the mother and father, the cells begin to divide very vigorously, very, very highly vigorously, and then form this little ball that they call the blastocyst. And then from the blastocyst, the brain takes over, because a notochord comes on top of it and begin to ask all the other cells to now change, and they differentiate into what becomes tissues and organ. However, as the baby grows in the womb, it begins to repair itself and to replicate exactly as it was in the original form, which is what we now know. And that process is so pristine, it's so completely the same that it doesn't change anyway. And it is that understanding of the fidelity of this replication process that we now know where the age begins, because it does not happen so perfectly, even though it was intended. So as we age, small errors occur in the early part due to the same environmental exposures we talk about: sunlight, our food, inherent mistakes, and the chemicals around us is making it even worse in our generation. It is these errors, we think, they are not errors in mutation because the genes are already there. They are errors in the way the genes express themselves. This happened to continue over time. This genomic instability is one of those hallmarks of aging, and we now understand how it happens. So genomic instability, because of the influence of environment, is what happens. And the tip of the chromosome, just like the zipper, the chromosomes, the way they divide during replications, they divide like the zipper, and so the zipper will zip back exactly how it was before. That's how they continue to maintain that fidelity. At the tip, just like this, the cap of the zipper, we now know that there is something they are called telomeres. Now, these telomeres try to maintain, by staying there, allows the cell to divide faithfully exactly the same way with each time. However, we now realize that over time, this cap begins to get shorter and shorter. And so at the last part, it can no longer hold, and that's what happens. A man called Herflix realized that is what creates the first part of the problem, because we now have a limitation to the number of time a cell can divide. So every time the cell divides, the telomeres get shorter. But guess what? There are certain enzymes in our body called telomeres, which repairs as that process that causes the telomere to get shorter, as it continues to affect the cell. These telomeres fix them so that it tries to hold it for a little longer. So the guy called Herflick had said that the limitation to the life cycle of a cell is about 70. So the cell cannot divide more than 70 to 80 times. But some people will have telomeres that can make it even better and stay a little bit longer and more time. However, over time again, this specific enzyme, telomeres, we now realize due to what we eat, due to how we use our muscles, and how the stress factors of life affect us, will get less and less as we age. And so it doesn't do the work it's supposed to do to help to maintain the telomere length. And that is what makes us age faster. And so telomeres, which won Nobel Prize in 2009 when they found about it, is also amenable to the same environmental factors that we know that is related to our diet, physical exercise, our mental state, the pollution around us, the way we carry ourselves, and the weight we carry, and all these other factors that we now also call lifestyle factors. They influence the enzyme's ability to repair the telomeres, and so that diminishing in that will result in the decrease of your Herflick's limit. So if your cell was supposed to have the Herflick limit of 90 and it changes to 60, then the cell will stop multiplying at 60 and the cell will die. So we now are going to senescence. That's what we know, that the telomere length is now related to age. And in fact, laboratories around the world are now using the telomere length to be able to assess your biological age and therefore able to monitor what happens to you. So telomere length decreases with time, and the rate at which this decline occurs depends on the availability of telomeres and telomeres which repair the telomeres. And it is these enzymes that invariably we now know, as it decreases, cause problems with our health as well as affect the rate with age. So if you're aging faster, it's because your telomeres are doing poor work. There are other enzymes called DNA polymerases that also help with the DNA. They are all amenable to the same factors. The fact is, let me from here, probably there's a lot to talk about, but I'm going to try and put it, like I said, this is part one. Let's talk about the reasons why I tend to avoid the term exercise when people are talking about exercise. Because we now know that, if you say mouth muscle and mind, I like to use muscle because it's just the straightforward term. It's not about exercise in terms of formal way. This confusion out there on the internet is also affecting what is now called diet and nutrition. I tend to avoid those because it is not about that we need to understand the basic concepts as we explore these topics, because the mouth is not just about diet or nutrition. It's about some of the things you need to do and whether to eat or not to eat. The same thing with the muscles. It's not just about exercise. It is how you use your muscles to manage the energy system of each cell. So we will delve into some of those aspects later. The mind is just about how you interact with the brain. The people don't understand about the role of the brain, because from the one I mentioned, it is one of the first things that started, differentiating, and it took charge of our development, and it is still responsible for every cell in our body. It also is an antenna, a transmitting antenna with the greater cosmic scheme. The body knows. That's what the body used to talk with the environment. In 2022, quantum entanglement won Nobel Prize of Medicine, and it tells us that everything in the universe is connected, and the brain is our one source of that connection. So I want you to know that the 3 M's that I mentioned about the mouth, muscle, and mind, and the influence of the availability of the telomeres is important. So I want to say that one of those hallmarks of aging that I want you to hold, 2 of them, is genetic or genomic or DNA instability, and of course the attrition of the telomeres, which affect the telomeres. So the other hallmark that I want to probably pick on is what I mentioned it earlier. Despite the fact that we know that our genes hold the core blueprint of our lives. But in 2012, the science of epigenetics now realized that the genes are not just as steady as they should be because they are influenced in the way they express themselves phenotypically or physically. So it's just like a contractor getting the blueprint of a house. The blueprint is clear, but the way the windows are arranged, he realized that if the windows are allowed the way they are, wind may come into the house. So he changes the way the doors are kept just to maintain the faithfulness of that. That's what that epigenetics is. That it's not just about the blueprint. Environmental factors can influence the way it turns out eventually. And when the Human Genomic Project was completed, sometime I think it's 2009 to 2012, it tells us that if you inherit any of the genes for cancer, for instance, BRCA genes, is present in your DNA. So the BRCA gene is present in your DNA. However, it does not express itself because the production of the proteins that eventually express cancer can be affected by the way our body presents that gene during the time the proteins are being formed or during the time the cell divide. It is those epigenetic modifications we now know our environment can influence. It's like a switch, a button that you can switch the expression of a gene on, which they call promotion or upregulation, or you can switch it off, which they call demotion or downregulation of a gene. So the cancer gene is there, but you can downregulate it by your lifestyle. And we now know that's the process of epigenetics. We are going to talk about them in details. In fact, I love epigenetics because it creates the environment for everything we want to know about how your lifestyle influences your whole health. So I'm going to leave epigenetics because it is the most important factor, I believe, that once you understand it, you're going to realize how everything you do, every habit you have right now is what could be the state of your health. So everything we are going to talk about on healthy living and with the concept of the mouth, muscle, and mind is really going to depend on how these factors affect the ability of our genes to manage the expression into one, the aging process and the manifestation of these diseases. So these epigenetic factors, which we are going to now go into detail to know, later we're going to go into details to talk about, is that you must find out that they are the most important part that influences the DNA replication. There are methylations, acetylations, ossifications we now know, but there are also genetic proteins called histones, which the DNA wraps around. Because they are proteins, they can change their transformation because of the environment. And when they change their transformation, they change the way the ladder is wrapped around them. And during the process of the way when they are being read, when this code is being read, it is that wrapping, the presentation of that wrapping, that determines which code is read and which one is not. That we now know is how epigenetic, the ability to manifest the phenotypical expression of the gene that is already there. It is the reading of the gene that is important. The gene is there. That's why people, when they did the Human Genomic Project, they said that they were just able to decipher only about 10% now, up to 10% of the whole of the DNA. They didn't know what the others do. And we now understand why they can't. So if you put So nature had therefore put this wrap that it can wrap around these proteins called histones. And when it wraps around it, it can now be, brought one side or the other during the time it is being read. Because they are proteins, they are amenable to change in the environment. It's just like if you put egg in hot water and the egg changes from liquid to albumin, the white of egg. So the alteration in the protein, which is the transformation of the protein, the histones, is also the histone modification, as is called in science, is what we now understand during the replicative process. It tells the gene which one of its blueprint to express. So if you have a cancer cell or a cancer codon, it can decide to hide it or bring it out depending on how the environment influenced that transformation of that histone protein. So that's very important to understand. I'm going to spend at least 2 other podcasts as we go on the understanding of the nitty-gritty of it's not rocket science. You can understand it, the whole process of epigenetics, because it is in itself fundamental to everything that happened to us as we age. So I thank you for listening today. In the next podcast, we are going to continue from where we stopped. We are going to begin to talk about some of the other most important known hallmarks of aging that we know and now understand that based on our habits and our lifestyle, we can influence. So I want you to please like and follow, because I believe that this is where we are going to be and where we are going to stay in a very long time to come. Thank you, and I thank you guys.